Okay, hi. I know I haven't made a video in a while, and yeah, I think I am bad at doing this. But hi, welcome to my channel. I'm Nat, and I do a channel based on books, and I like to read, and I like to talk at the camera. So I don't know. This is off to a great start. But anyway, um, today if I look a bit crusty, that's because I'm not wearing any makeup, so my pimples are like full HD for you all. Today's video is about reading. Is I think the title is gonna be like I read slowly for a booktuber, or like I have problems reading. I think being on like Bookstore, booktube for about 2 months now, I realize people do read pretty fast. So I did ask like a Insta poll on like how fast people read, and actually people do take about a week to read, which kind of surprises me because like if you take a week to read, that means you kind of finish only 4 books a month, but people are finishing like 10 books a month, so I don't really get it. My reading is kind of strange. My reading is kind of like I have 5 books on my currently reading list, and then I kind of like skim through 3 of them and then suddenly decide to finish one of them in one sitting, which takes me a day, and then I finish the other 2 in 3 weeks simultaneously. I just don't have a consistent reading schedule. So and I kind of want to talk through that. What really is the right way to read? What really is a reading pace? Like, how should you be reading? And I think I had immense guilt for reading too slowly, because I felt like, oh my god, everyone's finishing a book in 2 days, like in 5 days. Everyone's writing reviews after a week with the book. And it's so funny because I've always been reading alone, so no one has ever like made me feel that my reading was inadequate or at a strange pace. After being online, I started to realize that everyone was reading really quite rapidly, or at least at a pace that I wasn't used to. But after a lot of reflection, I realized that it was kind of okay. Um, and I'm gonna give you the reasons why I feel like my reading pace kind of makes sense for me now. First of all, I think it's really about the intentions that you have when you read. Some people, they read fiction books, or they might read creative nonfiction or any sort of book as a form of escapism. So it kind of makes sense to read um, more intensely for a shorter period of time with a book that they want to really immerse themselves in. Say, for example, you're reading like a fantasy series, definitely it makes sense to want to sit down and read it for like 5 hours in a row, because that's the most that you get out of the book, right? So intentions are very clear. I think for me, when I read, I'm reading a lot for self-knowledge, a lot for education. So it doesn't really make sense if I'm sitting down reading a book 5 hours, at one sitting, because a lot of the times the books that I choose are heavier to absorb. Maybe they're a bit of a academic side. So I mean, I know you don't sit down and do your readings for 5 hours straight. We all know that. I don't hold myself to that expectation when I read a book as well. It kind of makes sense for me to just read about maybe half an hour to an hour a day, and these books are thick, so it will take me more than a week to get through a reading like that. And sometimes it takes me a month, and I have been completely okay with that in the past. Like I mentioned, there was this book called Anatomy of Depression. It took me like 2 whole months to read it, but every time I read it, it was an extremely like educational experience. It was a very, very thorough and very deep experience for those 2 months I was reading that book. So really, I took 2 months, like full months, like every day reading it kind of situation. So I mean, and I learned a lot from it. So yeah, I think that's just the intentions for me. I think now I know that the way I read, which is a bit more sporadic or a bit less frequent but a lot more applied, it kind of makes sense to spread out reading over a few days or over a few weeks. The second thing about it, which is kind of tied to the intentions. It's the kind of book that you're reading and how you're applying it to your life. So I think what I struggled with was when people were reading a lot of books as if they were meant to be consumed in one whole sitting. I'm here to kind of disrupt that notion because, yeah, books are books. You might benefit from reading it from in an entire sitting, but honestly, do as you please. For me, I've been reading books where if I encounter something in the book that I am curious about, I will put down the book and I'll research about that thing, and maybe I'll find out something about that thing that the book isn't telling me about. And to me, that's learning, you know. And you know, as in a good author is someone that acknowledges that there are gaps in their writing and acknowledges that there are further resources that you can consult if you want to learn more. And so to me, it doesn't make sense to like read and then like, oh, there are all these things I want to know more about, and then I leave them after I read the entire book, because then I would have forgotten why I'll be so curious about it in the first place and the context in which I encountered that curiosity. So I think to me, like, that's why my books tend to encompass more than just reading that book, but kind of supplying it with a lot more information that's not in the book. And why I say it's really about the kind of books that you're reading is because I tend to read a lot of non-fiction, a lot of commentary, a lot of like knowledge-based books. And I mean, I do the same thing when I read fiction books as well. Like when I was reading a book about a kind of a family in Singapore, and there's a cultural fact that I'm not really familiar with, I would go and research about it. Like I'm not, you know, as a reader, I think I'm quite an active reader. I tend to want to know why I'm reading and to understand the context that the author is setting up for me. So yeah, I think that's the second thing, which is about, yeah, like the kinds of books that you're reading and how you're applying that to your life. And I think that it really depends. Like if you're someone who really wants to be immersed in that world and you want to really feed off the information that the author is giving you, and yes, when the author kind of restricts certain information, or when they are deliberate about omitting certain things, it is also part of their intentions. If you think that omission was intentional enough for you to continue reading the book as it is, then completely go ahead. I think that's fine and it's great. I think the third thing is just this entire culture of consuming more or having numbers. So I know there's this whole like Goodreads like reading challenge thing where you're supposed to read like a few tens of books a year, and I think this kind of goal setting is the most helpful for people who don't really have the habit of reading. So maybe for them they might want to set 5 books a year or maybe 10 books a year. But I think when it gets to a certain number, it gets a bit arbitrary, because you know, what's the point of setting like 100 books if you're speeding through them and you don't quite understand why you're reading them, and it kind of makes you guilty for not finishing a book. So I have done that. I have stopped reading a book because I just felt it was not relevant to my life at a certain point. So 2 months ago I was reading The Body, A Guide for Occupants by Bill Bryson, I think, and it was a really great book. I mean, I didn't finish it. I liked the idea of it. I mean, this was definitely a book that I would have enjoyed nonetheless. But at that period of my life, I was learning so much more about Singapore's politics and Singapore's history and also just my own interest in feminist and gender politics, that it didn't make sense for me to be, you know, dedicating so much mind space to this non-fiction book that's full of like biological facts about the body. It just didn't make sense at all because it just wasn't relevant to my life at that point. But I am keeping tabs on it, because in the future, if I am in a time of my life where I am wanting to learn more about the body, wanting to learn more about biology, about all these facts surrounding the human body and the physicalness that we occupy, then I will go back to that book. So it's, you know, that might be in a few months' time, that might be next year. Like, the book isn't gonna run away. so I just want to say that, because like being on Bookstart, I realized that there's certain trendy books that come up, and people read them because they're kind of like in trend, and they would kind of share opinions about it. And I think that's great. I think it's great to be able to share opinions about the same book. I think that's extremely valuable. I think it's just a bit of a pressure sometimes when you see the same few books kind of like popping up all the time, and you feel compelled to read it. I mean, definitely my interest in Singapore politics and history was because of that, because I kept seeing all these books on Bookstore, and I decided to get engaged with it, but I was kind of overwhelmed. And I realize now that I have to engage with it. I have to see where the things intersect. Like, if I have an interest, like personal interest in it, if the community is suggesting like really thoughtful recommendations, and third is like just where I am in my life right now, and to what degree I can engage with that. And for me, I was very willing to engage with that interest of mine at that time. So yeah, I don't know, I ended up talking so much, and I felt pretty strongly about this because as much as I love having a online community to talk about books and to talk about how we're reading and how we're kind of applying books in our life, but I do want to share a little bit of my perspective on, like finding a reading pace that works for you and understanding your intentions in reading. I just think that that's one of the best things that you can do for yourself, and then you can engage with the online community in a way that's healthy, because you start to see it as a place of like endless opportunities, of endless recommendations, but at the same time like understanding what you as a reader really want and how books can help you in your life. I realize there's nothing wrong with taking your time with books and finding knowledge and enjoying it in your own way. There's no right way to enjoy books. It's just about understanding how you wanna, internalize what you read and how you want to engage with people, and what matters the most to you. So yeah, other than that, I have nothing else to say. I think book update, I've just been reading a lot of books on and off. I'll probably do another video that's more dedicated to the books that I've completely finished, or say the books that I'm currently engaging with now, and just some possible books that I'll be exploring in the future. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this about reading and about books and not necessarily about the books themselves, like let me know. I'll be glad to do that, because I think I am a reader that really tries to do a lot of things with books and not just reading them like passively. So yeah, cool. Thanks for watching. Like this video, I guess, subscribe for more stuff like this, and yeah, I hope you're doing well. I hope you're feeling great, and have an amazing week ahead, and take care of yourselves. Thanks.